One of the things that people are discussing right now is the mainstream concern that this could be the last election. Now, I know that you talked, I think, with Sam Harris about this, that's complete BS and that people shouldn't be believing that because it's a dangerous thought. But I'm kind of paraphrasing Elon Musk's sentiment right here. He says the basic belief is based on the number of migrants that would have come in, if legalized and allowed to vote, would most likely vote overwhelmingly Democrat, and then the United States could become California politically because Democratic power would remain uncontested. What are your thoughts on that? Is that a genuine concern?
That's certainly a genuine concern. It is not the equivalent of saying this is the last election. Meaning, like, I don't think Elon's just going to go take his ball and go home if Kamala Harris wins the election. I think that very few of the people who claim that this is the last election ever are going to quit their jobs as political commentators and just say, well, I guess it's over now. I'm going to go home and take the Rod Dreher Benedict option and go live on my farm. Like that's not a thing that's going to happen.
The last contested election?
Even that, I hesitate to say. I mean, if you look at the history of the United States, the Democratic Party's dominance in Congress stretched from the FDR era all the way to 1994. That was like 50 years of uninterrupted Democratic dominance of the Congress of the United States. And then Republicans won. So that is to say that things tend to move and they tend to shift. And also, it depends on what level of government you're talking about. Like, am I super worried? We're in Florida right now. Am I worried that Florida is going to be like Kamala Harris's precinct of fun? Like, no, I don't think that's the case. I mean, thank God for the federalist structure. I think it's a little harder to change the systems than Kamala would like it to. Am I worried about all that stuff? Of course. I mean, I think that I'm worried about the legalization of 20 million illegal immigrants. I think that the supposition that all of those people and their children will forever vote Democrat is not true. I mean, that's been shown not to be true. I mean, you've seen a shift in the Hispanic vote just in my lifetime and over the course of the last couple of elections. So again, I think it's very hard to project out 20 years into the future where things are going to be. Do I think that in the immediate term, it's really, really bad what Democrats are attempting to do by saying that, like Kamala has said, she's going to kill the filibuster. She would do that in order to presumably, she says, put Roe versus Wade back in place. But that wouldn't be the extent of it. She would do more than that, because the problem with simply passing a law that says Roe versus Wade is restored is the next time the Republicans take Congress, they just unrestore Roe versus Wade and it just kicks back down. But by the way, even if she passed a federal law along those lines, my guess is the Supreme Court strikes it down and says that the federal government does not have the power to regulate in large scale on abortion, and this is a state issue, which is kind of what they said actually in the decision. What I'm more worried about is systemic changes to the actual institution. So I'm worried that Kamala Harris comes in, she says, let's get rid of the filibuster, and now let's immediately add 2 states. Right, so now we have 2 more senators from Puerto Rico and 2 more senators from D.C. And so suddenly you have a massive imbalance in the United States Senate, which is typically not the way you've added states. If you look historically, the United States typically added 2 states at a time, 1 Democrat, 1 Republican. So this is why Alaska and Hawaii came in at the same time. Ironically, Alaska was a Democratic state and Hawaii was a Republican state at the time. And again, things change. You've seen how that's flipped. So I'm worried about that. I'm worried about her saying that she would add justices to the Supreme Court, which would lead, I assume, to just an unending series of adding justices to the Supreme Court. So soon there's 98 judges on the Supreme Court because each party comes in and they reverse it and they're like, let's add more judges to the Supreme Court. And suddenly it's the Sanhedrin. You have 70.
The law of big numbers could actually, result in some pretty good.
I feel like the written decisions are going to be kind of a mess.
Yeah,
but it's those sorts of things keep me up at night and I think are really a problem. I'm obviously worried, as Elon is, about the legalization of this many people, especially in the sort of near term, immediate term, without any sort of assimilative process. But again, I think that it is dangerous in a democracy to say this is the last election, because the or is the next thing that comes. Or what? Or what? What's the alternative? So let's say, what are we supposed to do now? If this is the last election, then that starts to justify things like, okay, am I supposed to pick up a gun? What am I supposed to do? Because resistance to tyranny is pretty well ingrained in the American bloodstream. If the idea is that Donald Trump, this is, I think, what you're seeing right now. The left is saying Donald Trump is Hitler. And so the question I keep asking Democrats, including I asked Sam Harris this, like, okay, if he's actually like a Hitlerian figure, doesn't Kamala Harris have a moral responsibility not to certify the election even if he wins, just to stop him? When you start using this sort of language, you box yourself in logically.